Two people started carrying her right in the beginning. One person's on her feet, one person is on her wrists. They're carrying her into the field. Her wound is in her back. So the wound is now the lowest point in her body pretty much. Blood is running down the back of her coat freely out of the wound, and it's painting this path in the grass. Well, then for some reason the person on the feet dropped them right here. And the person on the wrists kept dragging her. At that point, her feet are lower than the fatal wound. Blood is not running out as freely. You have no blood transfer here. Then the person picks her up again right here, and you have blood start again, all the way out to the body. Cordell Brown took a look at the fatal knife wound. This is a photo of Peggy Hetrick's back. This is the fatal knife wound. At trial, he testified that there's a irregular shape at the top of the wound caused by serrations in her knife. Cordell Brown looked at the wound and says, well, they got it half right. At trial, they said that my survival knives did this because my survival knives were serrated, right? My survival knives were sawback. This is one of my knives. The teeth are like a saw blade. Cordell Brown says that would have pulled chunks of flesh back out. It wouldn't have cut the flesh cleanly like her wound was. He said this is the type of knife that probably did it. Something with serrations on the back. Like a steak knife. It cuts the flesh rather than pulling it apart. We also have these linear abrasions on Peggy Hetrick's cheek. At trial, the prosecution's theory was somebody came up behind her blitz style, grabbed her face, and scratched her cheek as they fatally stabbed her to death. And Selma is the first one to look at this picture, and she says, because you know the Netherlands have a lot more knife cases than we do over here, so they're more familiar with them. Selma says that's not scratches, that's a knife wound. Somebody held a blade up to her face, and furthermore, you could tell that it's serrated because you got that solid cut there, and then above it you have a dot, 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 dot. Somebody was trying to abduct her, or actually had abducted her. But Barry Getz also notices on Peggy Hetrick's jacket, this is her jacket right here. You see the cut right there to the fabric. On her jacket, on her blouse, and the fatal stab wound, they don't line up. They're turned to the left, as if she was turning for some reason. And then on the bottom of her shoes, you guys see her right boot? She has these unusual striations on her right boot. There's nothing on the left. The prosecution said that maybe this happened, maybe she kicked her leg or something when she was fatally stabbed. So my lawyers tried to reproduce this on Maria Lu's boots, and they could, no amount of kicking, reproduce these abrasions here. How they did reproduce them was having Maria stick her foot out of a moving car going like 3 to 5 miles an hour. Reproduced them every time. So now we believe we know what happened. We believe she was abducted. She was in a car at some point. She put her foot out. She was held at knife point. She was stabbed in a car. That's why there's not a lot of blood transfer at the crime scene. During the same time, Maria and Dave uncovered volumes of exculpatory evidence that was never turned over to us. One of the hugest things was we found out that Fort Collins police talked to a plastic surgeon about the sexual mutilations. Dr. Choi told my attorneys that he had told Fort Collins police the same thing. If this would have been a hard cut for him to make, not so much the excision to her nipple, but the mutilations to her vagina were a hard cut for them to make. I didn't put a picture in here because I thought it was a little too gruesome, but on the autopsy table, when Dr. Pat Allen was performing the autopsy on Peggy Hetrick, they took a picture of the mutilations. It took 3 hands to take that picture. 2 hands to hold her skin open enough so they could get a picture, 1 to flatten the skin enough to take the picture. Then we learn about an eye surgeon named Dr. Hammond. March 19th, 1995, Hammond's female house editor discovers he has hidden cameras in the house. Dr. Hammond has over 300 homemade tapes created in his downstairs bathroom, which we dub Toilet Studio, showing extreme close-ups of female genitalia. Dave Michelson testified at a hearing that this camera was so sophisticated that you could set an aerosol can on the toilet and read the entire label. He had a secret life involving prostitutes, secret apartments and lovers, and he had an extensive pornography collection in a secret storage unit worth over $10,000. He was home the night of Peggy Hetrick's murder and contacted her in the neighborhood canvas the morning her body was found. March 25th, 1995, Dr. Hammond commits suicide. All the evidence in his case is burned, August 1995. In the Hammond case, once we got a hold of it, we found a things to do list. And on that list was look into Hetrick, see if maybe she was on these tapes. It was the only thing on the list that wasn't crossed off. They never looked into it. 2007, the judge granted us permission to send the clothing over to the Netherlands for Richard and Selma to test for touch DNA. And we had an endless series of hearings in Fort Collins during that time. Around December, the test came back, Richard and Selma's test came back. They had found DNA on Peggy's clothing. January 18th, 2008, CBI backed up Richard's results. They also found DNA on Peggy's clothing. Touch DNA found in incriminating locations on Peggy's clothing matched her boyfriend, Matt Zollner. Special Prosecutor Don Quick from Adams County DA, who'd been appointed as the special prosecutor because we got the whole county recused, announced that he'd vacate my sentence and release me on a PR bond. And 1 week later, Lumber County DA's dismissed the charges against me. Man, your laptop's slow. It was a long, hard battle and took a whole village of people to accomplish, but on January 22nd, 2008, I was finally free from prison. In total, I'd spent 9 years, 5 months, and 12 days in custody for something I didn't do. And that concludes my presentation. Questions?
Sure, certainly. Questions. I'll start. How the hell do you get over something like that? Do you ever?
No, you don't ever get over it. About once a week, I still have a recurring nightmare that I'm in prison and I don't know what the hell I'm doing there.
I guess, why did it take them so long to finally, check out the DNA on her clothing and all of that stuff?
When I went to trial, touch DNA didn't exist, or wasn't very well known. And then once they have their conviction, the DOC doesn't give up its dead. They don't want to overturn a conviction. So they fought us tooth and nail the whole time. They didn't want us to do DNA testing.
Well, so I live up in that area, and I remember around when you were freed, my parents talking about it, and them saying that it never made sense in the beginning anyway. And it's just, did people, I know you said you were ostracized at Collins,
Yeah.
but, did people afterwards kind of be like, oh yeah, we knew it wasn't ever that way in the beginning, or was the
You know, when I was
town
in high
against
school,
you?
Even though I was ostracized by my peers in high school, I would still have girls come up and say, we heard you're a suspect in the case, we think that's crazy. But they weren't going to hang out with me because I was, in '87 when we first heard about the case, we thought Peggy Hetrick had been raped too. So there I am labeled a potential rapist and murderer. So nobody wanted anything to do with me.
Tim, tell us about what you're doing now.
As little as possible now.
No, be specific. I mean, you've been out for a couple of years, and so what's your daily life like now? What do you do? Tell them
Well,
where you are.
we finished. I wrote a book. I started working on my book shortly after getting out, and we finished that just last year. It came out in June. Most of the time, I spend a lot of time working on cars, fixing up my house.
So how about the lawsuits?
The lawsuits. We sued the prosecutors and the police who were responsible for my wrongful conviction for withholding all that evidence against them that was exculpatory towards me. And they eventually settled out of court for a combined total of $10 million. So after my attorneys got their cut, I had enough left to buy a house and a cup of Starbucks.
So, what do you do now?
Like I said,
For
as
a
little as
living, what do
possible.
you do?
I invested most of the money from the settlement, so I don't have to work. I spend my day working on the cars, working on the house, or traveling.
More questions? What do you think about, let's try to put this in a tactful way. What do you think about Broderick's situation right now, and what do you think about Zollner right now?
Zollner, I don't know. You know, I mean, I've been told Zollner is the prime suspect. I don't know. Is there a logical explanation for why his DNA shows up where it does? Maybe, I don't know. Dr. Hammond. The mutilations to the vagina looked surgical, like they only cut through one layer of skin. Like, who can do that? Was it Dr. Hammond? I don't know. Broderick. That man has been on paid leave for 2 years now. He was indicted originally on 8 counts of perjury by a grand jury in Fort Collins. He was able to get those cases dismissed because it wasn't clear when the statute of limitations began to run, so Weld County took him back to another grand jury and included that information, and they re-indicted him this time on 9 counts of perjury. So altogether, he's been on paid leave for over 2 years now. There's no love lost between me and that man. I'll just leave it at that.
You haven't had any chance to communicate with either him or the other prosecutors that since became
No, I haven't.
judges, and they haven't made any effort to contact you and say, oops, or...
No, they haven't. Eventually, the city of Fort Collins, the mayor, the interior police chief, and the district attorney, they publicly apologized to me for the case, for taking me to trial. But they didn't do it until the day that I was officially exonerated. Like, it's just so political. They gotta wait till the politics are there to be able to say, we're sorry, we screwed up.
Any other questions? All you can do is hope you never get charged with a murder. Even if you're innocent. Just screws up your life.
Well, it's
Thank
screwed
you
up.
so much, Tim, for coming.